everybody, welcome to my channel, Humble House. I'm very happy that you're here. We'll be making these cute baby bloomers. They're perfect for the fall and even still into the spring, when the weather is not as cold yet or not that cold anymore. Plus, these are adjustable in the waist, so they're perfect. These are the items that you'll need. Yarn. This is the Wool-like Simile Lane by Loops and Threads. It is a super fine one. The recommended hook size is 3.5 millimeters. This is the hook I'll be using, 3.5. You need scissors, measuring tape, yarn needle, stitch markers. If you don't have stitch markers, paper clips will do just fine. Start with a slip knot, form a little loop, grab your hook, insert it into the middle of that loop, and then pull that yarn through the middle, hold it, then hold the two ends and pull on your hook. Then adjust that loop on your hook. We'll be starting with it by chaining 12. You yarn over, pull it through that loop. That is your first chain. Yarn over, pull it through that loop. That's number 2. You want to have a total of 12 chains. Twist the base chain, and you will see in the back there are these loops that you can go through. Let me get as close as I can. So this is the front, and you would normally go through these spaces right there, those loops, but we're twisting it, like I said, and you see there's these back loops. So that is where you want to insert your hook, through that back space. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Insert through that loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Go all the way to the end of this chain. You will have 11 single crochets in total, since that last one does not count from the base chain. So whatever number you decide to do, let's say you do 10, you will have 9 going back. Now turn your work, chain 1. There's 2 loops from each stitch. We want to make single crochets, but only going through the back loop. Hope you can see that. Through there, you make your first single crochet, and then you keep going through those back loops. Making sure you have those 11 stitches. Now turn your work, chain 1, and repeat, only through the back loop. Those 2 loops, you only go through the back one. You will continue doing these rows of only single crocheting into the back row until you reach a certain length, depending on what size you're making it. Once you have reached the length that you need for the size that you need, in my case I am doing this 24-month size. Even though my daughter is only going to turn 12 months, she's already wearing size 18 to 24. After your last stitch, you will chain 1, then you will put the 2 sides together. Just make sure your band is not twisted anywhere. Okay, now instead of just going through the back loop, you will go through both of the loops into each stitch, and join them with a slip stitch. Oops. Ah, it's so slippery. Okay, there we go. And then you go into the next one, so the next 2 loops, through both loops, and across from that, and slip stitch. So yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop that is on your hook. Continue this until you reach the end of this row. There's that finished connection. It looks a little bit bumpy, but this will go inside. A chain 1, and you will turn that inside out. And now you want to make a single crochet into each row. So you know how there's 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So try to get into each row. So I will insert my hook here and do a single crochet, and then I will go into that next row. Sometimes it's kind of hard to determine which one is that next row. Continue this until you get to the end of the row, until you come back to this side. You can add a stitch marker here where you had your first single crochet, just so you know where you started. We will connect these 2 ends once you've gone around with a slip stitch. So take out your stitch marker, do your slip stitch, a single crochet into that same stitch, and add your stitch marker. Now you have to fold that waistband, and on this other end, so on the opposite end of where your single crochet is, as well as on these 2 sides, we're going to do 1 increase over here, 1 increase over here, and then another increase over here, and at the end. So a good idea is to add stitch markers before you start the row. Okay, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you get an idea. You can double check if you like it. Okay, that looks good. 2 single crochets until you get to the stitch marker. If you want to do it absolutely perfect, you can always count and then divide. Now I've arrived at the first one, well, almost, and this is where I'll do my first increase. That means you do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. Like that. Add your stitch marker, and then continue until you reach the next stitch marker. You will do another increase there, and continue with single crochets, then another increase, continue to with single crochets, and you will do an increase right before you get to the stitch marker. So not on the stitch marker where we started, but right before the stitch marker on your last stitch. That's where you'll do the increase, where the connection is. This was my last increase before we got to the stitch marker. So after we finished the waistband, the row of single crochets, I do not count it as number 1. So this one that we just did was number 1. This is round number 2. 1 single crochet into that same stitch, and add your stitch marker. We will repeat doing single crochets into every stitch, and then when we get to the stitch markers where we did our first increases, we will do 2 increases instead of 1. Here's our first stitch marker. So I'm 1 stitch before the stitch marker. I'm going to do my first increase into that one, and then my second increase into the one where the stitch marker is. Remember, it is 2 single crochets into that same stitch. That was my first increase. Now I take out my stitch marker and I will do my next increase. We'll add my stitch marker back and then continue. Do the same with the other stitch markers as well until you get back to this connecting part. Single crochet only for the next 3 rows. There will be no increases. No matter how many stitches you have from the previous row, we're going to do an increase every 10 stitches. So this first one that you did, it's 1, obviously 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then on number 10 you do an increase. And you start again, 1, 2, 3, so on until you reach every 10th stitch. You do an increase all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. Now if, let's say you do an increase and then you only have 4 stitches left, that's okay, you just do that last increase. Or if you have an increase and you have 9 stitches left, well then that's fine too, so do not worry about it. So here's my 10th, and this is where I do the increase, and then I start counting again from 1. After this round, once you reach your stitch marker, you will then do 2 rounds of single crochet, no increases. On this round, do your slip stitch, chain 1, and do your single crochet. This was your first stitch. Now we will do an increase at every 8th stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on the 8th you do an increase. Again, single crochet, and on the 8th an increase. When you're done with that, you will again do 2 rounds of single crochet only with no increases, and I will meet you after you've done this round of increases and the 2 rounds of single crochets. And we are now at round number 12. Means we're going to do increases here. I have my first single crochet. Now do 4 more. That will give you a total of 5 single crochets, and then on the 6th one we will do our increase. So on the 6th one is where you do the increase, and then again 5 single crochets, and then an increase on the 6th. Go all the way around until you get to your stitch marker. For rows number 13 and 14, you will only single crochet. There will be no increases. Now on to round 15. So I have my first single crochet, then single crochet into the next 2. That's a total of 3 single crochets. And then on the 4th one, do an increase. Then again, do 3 single crochets, and then on that 4th one, you do an increase. You will repeat that pattern for this round until you get to your stitch marker. Continue doing rows of single crochet. I'm going to do 10 more rows of no increases. Here's a chart on how many rows you want to do depending on your size. I already did my slip stitch and my single crochet. That's the first one. Now I will single crochet 8 more to have a total of 9. There you go, 9. Now into the 10th stitch, that is where I will do my first decrease. You insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, you have 3 loops on your hook, and yarn over and pull through all 3. That's your first decrease. Now single crochet 9 again. Once again, into that 10th, you will do your decrease. And pull through all 3. Keep going until the end, until you reach your stitch marker. Single crochet for the next 8 rounds. For round 35, I started as usual with the slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet into the same stitch. So that was my first single crochet. I will do a total of 7 single crochets. Now the 8th stitch, we will do a decrease. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then into the next one, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Then you start to count again, 7 single crochets, and on the 8th you do a decrease. You will do this for the whole round, and then once you get to the stitch marker again, you will single crochet for 6 rows, no increases or decreases. I will meet you when you're done with those. Okay, for round number 42, I already started, but basically you slip stitch, then chain 1, single crochet into that same stitch, then you're going to single crochet a total of 5, so including that first single crochet that you made, and then on the 6th stitch you will do the decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is that decrease. Continue doing that for the whole row. Then after you finish with this row, you will do 4 more rounds of single crochet only. So you will do 4 rounds of single crochet. I will meet you after that. And this is another round of decreasing. This was my first single crochet. I will do 2 more. That gives me a total of 3 single crochets, and then on the 4th you will do your decrease. 3 single crochets, and then the 4th with that 5th one, decrease. Go all the way around, repeating that pattern until you get to your stitch marker. Continue with 10 more rows of single crochets. That would be rows number 48 to 57. The side, well, this part where we connect it, I always put it to the side. I don't put it to the back. We need to find the middle of this so we can join these 2 parts and have the legs. To fold your bloomers in half, just stretch it out, and then take a stitch marker when you found the middle. It's just an estimate, and go through it. Now open them back up. For a 1 to 2 year old, I need to have about an inch that I'm going to close off. So that's about 8 stitches. So this is the middle, and I want to do, let me mark those off. And of course you can always count your stitches around and make sure that you have the exact middle if you wanted to. Okay, there, I marked it off with stitch markers. So this will be the part that I close off. These are my two sides. So I just like to add stitch markers everywhere so that I have a better overview of what I'm doing. Now let's go back to where we had our first single crochet with our stitch marker, and single crochet until you get to that first stitch marker. I have reached my first stitch marker, and this is the one that I want to join with the one that's across. Okay, so I'll take out this first stitch marker, insert your hook into that stitch, then yarn over and pull up a loop. Then you're going to go across, and the reason why I didn't take it out is because I would probably lose the stitch and not remember where I needed to go in. Now I will yarn over as well, pull up a loop. Now I have 3 loops on my hook. Now I yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now I will take this one out, the stitch marker, and I can show you one more time. Into the next stitch, insert your hook on that side that's closest to you, then yarn over, pull up a loop, then you go across to the next stitch, so be careful, don't stitch into the same one that you just did. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Again, into the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. Once again, go across, also into the next stitch. So like I said, be very careful not to go into the one that you just did. Then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Now continue doing that until you get to these 2 stitch markers. There's that closure, so that middle part. Now we will continue with this leg. Single crochet 3 times around this leg until you get back to this point. When you get to the part where the joining is, to get to the other side, I like to do a stitch in there, so where that last joining was, and then I go across and do my regular single crochet. So it's like you add an extra stitch so that it looks nicer and there's no big hole right there. I've done my 3 rounds of single crochet, and I had added a stitch marker just to make sure I knew where I had started. Now I'm going to take this one off, and I will slip stitch into that stitch and chain 3. This is called the ruffled edge, and usually you do it in multiples of 2s, but I'm not doing the whole ruffled edge. So I'm not doing like the double crochets and half double crochets in front of it, just adding that last part. So don't worry too much about how many stitches you have. This is crochet after all, and it's very forgiving, which is great. Depending on how many stitches you'll have, you'll either end with 2 double crochets here or 3. So like I said, start with these 3 chains. This counts as 1 double crochet. Into that same stitch you will do a double crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Then go into the next stitch. This is where we will do 3 double crochets, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. repeat that to do a total of 3 double crochets into that same stitch. Then the next stitch will be 2 double crochets only. The next stitch will be 3 again, and so on. Repeat that pattern of 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. And that would just give it a little ruffled edge. So I ended mine with 3 double crochets into the same stitch. Remember that chain of 3 at the beginning? So what I like to do is I go kind of like here in the middle, insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then I go into the top chain, insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and that same loop I will pull it through the 2 that I had on my hook. That way I don't have a big hole here. Now cut off your yarn, pull it through that loop, and thread it in. You might want to use a thinner needle. Simply work this yarn into the bloomers from the inside. Just go back and forth a couple of times, and then go back and forth, and back again. Let's repeat the same thing with this other leg, but remember that we already have that first half of our single crochets where we started. Remember, we started here, then joined, so this is that first half. So now we will start over here. I will find the stitch where we joined, insert my hook, grab the yarn, and pull up a little loop. Okay, then simply start by doing your single crochets into that next stitch. Go around 3 times and then do that ruffled edge. Now when you get back to this part, remember how we joined? You just simply go into every stitch so that it all looks like one. And obviously your 3rd row should end on this side, not here. And by the way, where you had your stitch markers, you don't need to, on each round that you made of the single crochets, you don't need to slip stitch and then keep going. You just single crochet into the next stitch. And all we need to do is the tie for the top. Start with a slip knot, so make your little loop. Chain about 125 to 130, or however long you want it to be, if you want it longer. Single crochet your way back, but not through these loops. Twist your chain, like so. If you can see, there's like this middle loop. That is where you will insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Go all the way back. So I will chain 1, and then I will do 1 more round of single crochets. Go back and forth all the way around the short. We are done with the baby bloomers. Thank you guys for sticking through it. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll make some adorable bloomers. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. Also follow me on Instagram at HumbleHus, and I will see you next time. Bye.